المرسلين سيدنا ونبينا ومولانا محمد صلى الله عليه وآله وصحبه أجمعين ربي اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي صدق الله العظيم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. All thanks and praises due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who's brought us together. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bestow His choicest blessings on the beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. We would like, on behalf of Islamic Network, we would like to welcome everybody here, alhamdulillah, to this, the seminar, the day of seminar, entitled The Quran and the Akhir Zaman. And we are very honored and pleased to have our teacher here, Maulana Imran Nasir Hussain, that will host the program today. In fact, we've been waiting for this for quite a long time, alhamdulillah, and we are pleased to say that Maulana has graced us with his presence. And I'm sure today, looking at the topic at hand, that we will certainly be having a very insightful look into the Quran and the Akhir Zaman, inshallah. The format for the day is as follows. We will be having, Maulana Imran Nasir Hussain will start off looking at the topic from Arab Spring to Arab Spring, and the focus here is going to be broadly on the Quran and the Akhir Zaman, looking at the conquest of Constantinople, looking at the Yankees Jihad of Syria, and later on that will conclude the first session. Following that, we'll break for tea. After that, we will be then Sheikh Ali Mustafa will also who's present here in front. Sheikh Ali Mustafa will then proceed with his second session, and that will be entitled The Quran, the History of the Quran, inshallah. And there the focus will be principally be looking at the methodology, how the Quran is used to interpret history rather than the other way around, and how this ties in with the prophetic message, inshallah. Just a few rules and regulations. There will be question and answers, and we of course will have roaming mics going around, and of course we will also have, for those who don't want to speak of the mic, there will be papers and pen going around, inshallah, for you to write your questions, inshallah. So we pray, inshallah, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless this gathering, inshallah, and that we will have the ilm that we acquire today, that inshallah it will be of benefit to us, and for those we impart it to, we will, inshallah, we hope that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you in that, inshallah. So without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to Maulana Imran Hussain. Just a preface in terms of Maulana Imran Nasir Hussain hails from Trinidad Tobago. He was a scholar. He attended the Alamia Institute in Pakistan under the tutelage of the illustrious scholar Maulana Dr. Fazlur Rahman Ansari, and he also has authored several texts, some of which is in front. If you wish to purchase it later, it is in the lobby, and you can speak to Hassanain, Abdullah or Ibrahim there. None other than the Jerusalem in Quran, which is one of the great contribution to our knowledge. Also the prohibition of riba in the Quran and Sunnah. The Surah Kahf in the modern age, and Ya'juj and Ma'juj, an Islamic view. So inshallah, with that, we'll hand over to Maulana Imran Nasir Hussain, who will now conduct the from Arab Spring to Arab Spring. Tafadhal.
Alhamdulillah wa kafa, wassalatu wassalamu ala ibadihi alladhina istafa, khususan ala afdalihim wa khatamin nabiyyin, Muhammadin al-Amin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in wa ba'd. Respected Chairman, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. on this, the second day of our seminar in the beautiful city of Cape Town. Our topic today, for which we prepared the way yesterday, when we spoke yesterday on the Quran and Akhirul Zaman, it was to prepare the way for today's subject, which is from Arab Spring to Arab Spring. We actually pioneering new territory with this topic. We are attempting to interpret history, historical events, from the perspective of the Quran and the Quran's, what the Quran has to say concerning Akhirul Zaman, or Islamic eschatology. It has not been done so far. This is the first time it is being done. And we are simply pioneering the subject now. And it is our students who are going to have to take this forward. We're going to have to be very careful with dates. We would much prefer to have used the Hijri calendar. But because everyone's minds, your thinking process has already been conditioned by the calendar which came out of the Vatican, the Gregorian calendar, which succeeded the Justinian calendar. The Justinian calendar is still used in some parts of Eastern Europe, but the Gregorian calendar has now become universal. And so, whether we like it or we don't, we're going to have to accept that the body of Fir'aun was discovered in the year 1898. And yesterday, we offered an interpretation of the verse of the Quran, فَالْيَوْمَ نُنَجِّيكَ بِبَدَنِكَ. This day have we ordained that your body is going to be preserved, to save your body. لِتَكُونَ لِمَنْ خَلْفَكَ آيَةً. That this physical body of yours, when it is discovered in the future, when it resurfaces in the historical process, would be a sign for a people to come after you. And we asked, what was that sign? We said, number one, it is a sign that history will now repeat itself. And that epic encounter between Fir'aun and Musa alayhi salam, between truth and falsehood, between a proud and arrogant and powerful oppressor and the oppressed who are weak and helpless. That epic encounter which ended with a divine intervention, strike the water, and then the miracle occurred. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala intervened to ensure that the oppressor was destroyed, and the oppressed were saved and victorious. That epic encounter will now be repeated in history. That was the first conclusion we came to. The second was that the timing was important. That when the body of Fir'aun is discovered, this is the sign that Akhirul Zaman has now commenced. To the best of my knowledge, This is the first time that this verse of the Quran has been interpreted in this way. And hence it is sensible on my part to say, if I give an opinion, don't accept it unless you are convinced that it is correct. My teacher of blessed memory and Sheikh Ali Mustafa's teacher, Maulana Fadlur Rahman Ansari rahimahullah, like all the other ulama, confined themselves to saying, well, this is a divine prophecy, and that the body was discovered indicates that it proves that the Quran is indeed the word of Allah. Full stop. Islamic scholarship never went beyond that. Now Islamic eschatology has come to offer something more, and Allah knows best. When we accept this interpretation of the verse, now let's see what happens. About the year 1997, yes, it was 1997, the Zionist movement was established, formally established. 1897, in Basel, in Switzerland. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is waking us up. Now that this Zionist movement has been established, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala causes the body of Fir'aun to be discovered to inform us. This is the implication of the establishment of the Zionist movement, that the last countdown of Akhirul Zaman has now commenced. So watch the Zionist movement. In previous lectures, I don't think I've done it here, I have taken that verse of the Quran of Surah Al-Ma'idah to point out that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has prohibited Muslims from maintaining friendly ties and being allies of whom? Of such Jews, not all, and such Christians, not all, وَعَدُوهُمْ أَوْلِيَاءُ بَعْضٍ. The world of Islam has heard me talking about this so much they're probably fed up now. This man has repeated it so many times. Well, you're going to be even more fed up with me because I'm going to keep on repeating it until, inshallah, I can get even one or two of the ulama to agree with me. But Allah has not prohibited us from maintaining friendly ties and being allies with all Christians. No. With all Jews. No. لا تتخذوا اليهود والنصارى أولياء. Do not take the Jews and do not take the Christians as your friends and allies is not meant universally. No. Rather, Allah is speaking about these Jews and these Christians. Which ones? بَعْدُهُمْ أَوْلِيَاءُ بَعْضٍ. Meaning such Jews and such Christians who come together to reconcile and to establish friendly ties and become allies of each other. And if we maintain friendly ties with such people, if we take weapons from them to go wage a jihad in Syria, if we take money from them and from their allies, and Saudi Arabia is an ally, to go and wage a jihad in Libya and in Syria, what will be the implication? The verse continues. It says, وَمَنْ يَتَوَلَّهُ مِنْكُمْ فَإِنَّهُ مِنْهُمْ. This is a very heavy statement in the Quran. And whosoever from amongst you turn to them with such a relationship of friendship and alliance, you now belong to them. You no longer belong to us. فَإِنَّهُ مِنْهُمْ. This is what happened in 1897. A Zionist movement came into being, created primarily by Zionist Jews, but then bringing together Zionist Jews with Zionist Christians. And a Judeo-Christian alliance emerges on the stage of the world. And the Quran is prohibiting us from maintaining friendly ties with them. It is about this time that this alliance, they have been preparing for it before. And in a country called, where was it? A little north of South Africa. Was it Zambia? I don't know what name they used at that time. Southern Rhodesia, probably? Yeah. A child was playing, an African child was playing, and the child found a large stone that was glittering. Botswana. Took the stone home. The father took the stone to the commissioner of that district. The commissioner sent it to Johannesburg. Johannesburg looked at it and said, "This is the biggest diamond." This is the biggest diamond we've ever seen for a long, long time. And that didn't happen by accident. Because the Messenger of Allah sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam had said that the earth would reveal its treasures for Dajjal. And so the mining of diamonds took place in southern Africa. What was his name? The fellow who came and ripped them all off? And then they put his statue there somewhere at the back of Cape Town on the hill. Cecil what? Cecil John what? Ah, you got his name. He did the work to ensure that the Africans who worked in digging the hole, like the one in Kimberley, called Big Hole, you must go and see it. They say you can put 5 jumbo jets down in that hole. Then the Africans were kept happy with fire water, alcohol. And they were exploited, they used their labor, and then the diamonds were taken out, and they were called diamond veins down at the bottom, way down. The only people who had the technology to go down so deep into the earth was that Western civilization that Dajjal had created with its scientific and technological revolution. And Cecil John Rhodes got all of the diamonds to go up to Europe, to the Rothschilds. They had them polished and cut and so on, and they had them put on the market. And during the last decade and the first decade, the last decade of the 19th century and the first decade of the 20th, the Zionists were able to amass all the money that they needed in cash. So that by 1940, when they were ready, they could close down Kimberley. I don't know how many South Africans know that. 1902, which is just 4 years, 5 years after mentioned to. In 1902, we see the beginning of the Arab Spring. And that is Abdulaziz ibn Saud and his clan, who had been driven out of the Arabian Peninsula, they were somewhere in Kuwait, were able to make a comeback. And they took the city of Riyadh, 1902. Your Arab Spring has started. But in 1902, something else happened. The Zionists had been at work, modern Western civilization, in trying to brainwash people, officers in the armed forces of the Ottoman Empire, and intellectuals in the Ottoman Empire, to secularize their thinking. The Ottoman Empire had for some time now been described derisively by Europe as the sick man of Europe. Because all the rest of Europe was benefiting from the scientific and technological revolution and was becoming militarily more and more powerful. The economy of Europe was improving because it's an exploitative economy. Europe had been sending her armies out into the world and occupying and colonizing the rest of the world, using the newfound military power that came from the scientific and technological revolution. And money is flowing back into Europe. Europe is growing more and more wealthy and militarily more and more powerful, and the Ottoman Empire is left behind. The Ottomans attempted to copy, to mimic, to follow the pattern of Europe, to try to bring about some change in their own economy and bring about some change in their own military science. But it was to no avail, because Dajjal was the author of that scientific and technological revolution. And this disparity between the Western world and the Ottoman world impacted upon the intelligentsia and impacted upon the Ottoman military. And from their ranks emerged those who now wanted change. We want the Ottoman Empire to be changed, and we want it to become like Europe. These people were called the Young Turks, for want of a better name. And the Zionists had been cultivating ties with them. Amongst the Zionists were those who were Jews and who had pretended to leave Judaism and had become Muslims. They had Muslim names. There was a term used to describe these people. I don't know whether my pronunciation is correct of this Turkish term. They're called Domni. Amongst them was Mustafa Kemal. In 1902, France hosted a conference which brought together not only these people from the Turkish homeland, Ottomans, but also Christian minorities who were opposed to the Ottoman Empire. And that conference, which took place in Paris in 1902, was responsible for charting the way for the revolution of all revolutions. Yes, the French Revolution was important. Yes, the American Revolution was important. Yes, the Bolshevik Revolution was even more important. But nobody ever talks about this revolution. This one, they put it under the wraps. They don't want us to focus on this revolution. This was the most important of all. It took them only 6 years, from 1902 to 1908, to succeed. In 6 years' time, they overthrew, it's called regime change. Yeah. They overthrew the Ottoman Sultan, whose name was, we don't even remember his name now, Abdul Hamid. Sultan Abdul Hamid was overthrown. He had to step down. And these secular Turks, the books now, to study how the Ottoman government, these essentially godless secular people, now pursue a policy of antagonizing the Arabs from Constantinople, antagonizing the Arabs in the Arabian Peninsula in particular. Why are they doing that? They follow a second policy, not only of antagonizing the Arabs, but antagonizing Muslims. Because they want to provoke, you know the word, a revolt. They want to provoke a revolt. At the same time that they are doing that work from Constantinople, Britain sends her spies into Arabia with a fat checkbook. Maybe there was also some cash. And Britain's spies approached the Ottoman appointed governor of Mecca. Well, they didn't use the word governor, they used the word Sharif. The Sharif of Mecca. Maybe that's where they got, the Americans have the sheriff in the town sheriff. So he was known as the Sharif of Mecca. And his name was Hussein bin Ali. If you get a copy of my, I don't know whether we have it at the back, the Caliphate, the second edition? Yeah, okay, all right. We have it at the back. The Caliphate, the Hijaz and the Saudi Wahhabi nation state, second edition. At the back of that book I have put a copy of a proclamation issued by Hussein bin Ali. What Hussein bin Ali does not say when he announces that he is now revolting against the Ottoman Khalifa, who is a figurehead. He wields no power. The government is not in his hands. He is revolting against the Ottoman Khalifa and proclaiming his independence. This is what the Zionists wanted, revolt, the Arab revolt. And he explains why I'm doing it. Because these fellows, look at what they're doing. Look at how they're behaving and all the anti-Islamic activities and so on. Well, what Hussein bin Ali does not say is that he accepted how many million pounds? 7 million pounds from the British as bakshish to revolt in manifest violation of Allah's command in the Quran. Upon this revolt of the Sharif Hussein And he says, well, I want to be Khalifa now. The Arabs want the Khilafah. The rest of the Arab world is now in a state of revolutionary turmoil. We also want independence from the Turkish Ottoman rule. And the Zionists, with the first Arab Spring, the Zionists are able to succeed in cutting off the Ottoman Empire from the rest of the world of Islam. In 1914, the war took place. The war began. They call it the First World War. Against Rome. Yesterday we told you who was Rome. These were wars of unprovoked aggression. These were wars based upon a fraudulent belief that Islam had ordained eternal and perpetual jihad against all non-Muslims. And our objective is to transform the whole earth into Darul Islam. We still have some fools around who believe in that nonsense, including some so-called scholars of Islam, Eastern Europe and Europe. And during these 500 years, I told you yesterday about what they did to Christian women. I told you yesterday what they did to Christian boys. But Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam had made a prophecy. And I quoted it yesterday. He said, لَتَفْتَحَنَّ الْقُسْطَنْطِنِيَّةَ. You will most certainly conquer Constantinople. وَلَنِعْمَ الْأَمِيرُ آمِرُهَا وَلَنِعْمَ الْجَيْشُ ذَلِكَ الْجَيْشُ. He praised the army and he praised the commander of that army which would conquer Constantinople. He never said that in order to conquer Constantinople you're going to have to fight Rome. It doesn't say so. Constantinople is the heart of Rome. And in Constantinople is the cathedral, which is the preeminent cathedral of the whole of Rome, Hagia Sophia. What the Ottomans did not do is to go to the other hadith, which is in the Sunan of Abi Dawood, in which the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam gave to Mu'az ibn Jabal, who was sitting with him, the timeline. He said, Umran Bayt al-Maqdis, Kharabu Yathrib, that when Jerusalem is flourishing, center stage in the world, at that time, Yathrib, which is Medina, would be in forlorn desolation, Kharab. Kharab Yathrib, Khuruj al-Malhama. At that time when Medina is in forlorn desolation, look for the Malhama. The Christians call it Armageddon, the great war, the war of all wars. The Malhama is so great a war that birds flying in the sky will fall down. Why? Can't navigate anymore. Why? Radiation in the sky. Maybe nuclear weapons being used. Nuclear radiation. Khuruj al-Malhama, Fathul Constantiniya. Only after the Armageddon or Malhama, the great war, takes place, only then look for the conquest of Constantinople. And then the hadith ends, Fathul Constantiniya Khurujud Dajjal. When Constantinople is conquered, it is at that time that the world will witness not the release of Dajjal, but the emergence of Dajjal in this world of space and time, the stage of history. And so what the Ottomans did not do was to say to the world that the conquest of Constantinople, prophesied by Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, is to take place in Akhirul Zaman. Instead, in the year 1452, I think it was, they conquered Constantinople. And Sultan Muhammad Fatih is now recognized by a world of Islamic scholarship which seems to be asleep. This is the man praised by the Prophet ﷺ. And the present Turkish government and the present Turkish regime and the intelligence want the world of Islam to have this reinforced, so they just produced a movie which is showing to packed audiences in Turkey that the Sultan Muhammad Fatih, this is the man praised by the Prophet ﷺ. No, that's rubbish. I told you yesterday that everything that they did was meant to antagonize Rome. Why do they want to antagonize Rome? Because it is in Akhirul Zaman that you're going to have a Muslim alliance with Rome. That's why. So the Ottomans are actually dancing to a tune being played by Dajjal. Whether they knew it or they don't, I don't know. So Russia hates the Muslims and the Ottoman Empire. Oh yes, Russia hates them. And the Eastern Orthodox Christians, they hate Islam. Why? Because of what the Muslims are doing to us for 500 years. So what Britain and France did, I think it was about 1907, which is 9 years after the body of Pharaoh is discovered. What Britain and France did cunningly, is to embrace Russia. Traditionally, they've always fought against Russia. And they've always been allies of the Ottomans. Britain and France were always allies of the Ottomans. They always protected the Ottoman Empire. They always assisted the Ottoman Empire. They didn't want Russia to ever defeat the Ottomans. No. But now that the body of Pharaoh is discovered, they do something strange and mysterious. They reach out to Russia to successfully embrace Russia in an alliance, a triple alliance, 1907. Britain, France, and Russia, knowing that the World War is coming up. Why did they do that? Answer, I wish I had enough time to stop and ask you all some questions. In chess, there's a term, they call it checkmate. Checkmate. You put your enemy in a position where he can't move. Anyhow he turns, he's blocked. So they checkmated the Ottoman Empire. So that when the war starts, the Ottomans cannot become allies in the war with Britain and France. Why? Because Russia is there. And Russia is a traditional enemy. That's why they did it. So the pieces on the chessboard are being put in place as we approach 1914, when the World War is to take place. Out there, Hussein bin Ali is ready to revolt against the Ottoman Empire. And over here, the Turks, the secular Turks, take over the government, regime change. And over there, Britain and France make an alliance with Russia to checkmate the Ottoman Empire. Russia responded when the war started. Russia naturally, you can't blame Russia, in seeking to get all the Orthodox Christians under Ottoman rule to revolt. What's wrong with that? This is war. And as the Armenians revolt against the Ottoman Empire, what the secular Turks did, and they admitted, they say, yes, we did it, was to forcefully remove millions of Armenians from territory in which they were located, which was vulnerable to Constantinople, to another area. And a great massacre took place. The secular government in Constantinople can't fool us by throwing wool over our eyes. All the excuses that they made, and they are still making to this day, is just dust in our eyes. They deliberately massacred the Armenian Christians. It's called a Holocaust. It did take place. Why? It's not too difficult for you to understand why. Because they are pursuing the same policy that the Ottomans had pursued before the regime change. What was that policy? Deliberate antagonism of Rome. So that the hatred that the Orthodox Christians have for Islam would intensify. That's why you had the Holocaust of the Armenians in must have been around 1914, 15, somewhere around there, okay? By 1917, the writing was on the wall for two countries. The writing was on the wall for the Ottoman Empire, that they were going to be defeated. They had made an alliance with Germany because there was nothing else that they could do. Because they had been checkmated. That's what Britain and France wanted. We wanted you to make an alliance with Germany. The writing was on the wall for the Ottoman Empire and for Germany. You were losing the war. All that the Zionists needed to win the war was to get the United States of America to enter the war. The fellow who gave us the motor car, what was his name? Henry? You've forgotten his name? You still have Ford motor cars around. FOR did a fix and repair, something with that. Henry Ford did everything he could possibly do to prevent the United States from entering the war. And when he lost the battle, he had the money to bring together the research scholars and to be able to document how they succeeded. And he produced a book called The International Jew, in 4 volumes, big. in which he explains and reveals what they did, the Zionists did, to get the United States into the war. Most Americans have not read that book. It's banned in the United States. As soon as the United States entered into the war, it was over. But before that, before the United States entered into the war, Germany had the upper hand. And Britain and France very cunningly ensured that Russia would bear the brunt of the fighting from 1914 to 1916. Millions of Russians were killed. Russia had to abandon Moscow, I believe. And the Russian economy was in shambles. And the Russians were suffering, and this is precisely what the British wanted. Oh, we are allies. No. What Britain and France did was to say to Russia in 1907, or maybe shortly after that if you join with us in an alliance, when we defeat the sick man of Europe, we promise you Constantinople. And the Russians fell for the bait. I went to Russia and warned them, don't fall for the bait a second time. They're coming to you with another bait now. If we win the war, we offer you Constantinople. But they were not sincere. In the same way that they were not sincere with the Arabs when they were fomenting this Arab revolt to get your independence from the Turks. We promise you, if you will assist us in defeating the Ottoman Empire, we promise you independence. There will be one Arab nation at the end of the war, one Arab nation, and the king of the Arabs would be Hussein bin Ali. You believe the British and the French? Are you so stupid? So on the one hand, they were offering Russia Constantinople, and you are our ally. But behind Russia's back, they were stabbing Russia in the back. How did they do it? The strategy was to get Russia to take the brunt of the fighting, to get Russia to take the brunt of those who were being killed in the war, to get the Russian people to suffer and suffer and suffer, and then to foment revolt in Russia. And the Russian Jews now play a critical role in bringing about a revolution. The timing of the revolution is immaculate. Immaculate. The Russian troops are approaching Constantinople. Constantinople is within reach of the Russians. And this is the prize which has been offered to them by Britain and France. But Britain and France do not want Russia to take control of Constantinople. No. Why? Because tomorrow there's going to be a state of Israel. And we do not trust Russia. Because Russia is not Western Christian, it's Eastern Christian. And we do not want Russian warships to be able to pass through the Bosphorus to get into the Mediterranean Sea. So we want to control the Bosphorus, and we must therefore control Constantinople. Under no condition must Constantinople ever get outside of our grasp or reach. And so when the Russian troops were within grasp of Constantinople, then the Russian Jews acted. In October 1917, because there is popular discontent in Russia over the war, because the Russian troops are suffering in the war, because workers are suffering in the war, the economy is in shambles. There are riots and demonstrations all over Russia. The Tsar Nicholas can't handle it. So now they succeed, the Russian Jews, amongst them is Lenin. And they overthrow the Russian monarchy. It will not be long again before they overthrow another monarchy. This monarchy had lasted for a few hundred years, the Russian monarchy. But that monarchy is 4,000 years old. And they're going to overthrow that one as well. Which one am I talking about? Come on, somebody. China. China. The Chinese emperor. They're 4,000 years old of emperors. The Tsar Nicholas and his entire family are assassinated, killed. And the Zionists take over Moscow, October 1917. The first thing that they do is to withdraw Russia from the war. Why? So that the Russian troops cannot proceed further to take Constantinople, which is what Christian Russia wants. Because the Bolsheviks don't care for religion. No. What they want is a godless atheist state, and they get it in 1922 when the Soviet Union is created as a Zionist creation, the Soviet Union. So the Zionists are achieving monumental successes. I mean, there was a revolution in Constantinople in 1908, which overthrew the Ottoman regime, which was based on the Sharia. And now you have a secular regime in Constantinople. And now look at what they do a few years later in Moscow. This is the Orthodox Church, the Christian Orthodox Church. This is Rome. So Islam is now being ruled by secular Turks, young Turks in Constantinople. And Rome is now being ruled by Jews, Russian Jews, godless Russian Jews, who take a lot from Karl Marx, the German Karl Marx, who was a Jew as well. The events which have been unfolding since the birth, since the discovery of the body of Fir'aun show a certain pattern. And what we are doing is connecting the dots that were never connected before. This is the first time. We're connecting it from the perspective of Islamic eschatology. The British and the French decide to launch an attack on the Ottoman Empire and to land a few 100,000 troops in a place called Gallipoli. The history of that war, the true history, is still to be written, I believe. But they maneuver, and at the end of it, Mustafa Kemal defeats them very conveniently. And Mustafa Kemal now emerges as the hero of all the Turks. They worship the man now. And then he proceeds to take on Greece, which has sent troops into the Turkish heartland. And Mustafa Kemal defeats the Greek army. The Greeks are seeking help from Britain and from France. But Western Christianity does not want to support Eastern Christianity. So Greece is defeated. And by 1922, Mustafa Kemal is without question the hero of all the Turks. Oh yeah. He's able to take over Constantinople because British troops and French troops are there. And as he takes over Constantinople, he proclaims that we want the Republic of Turkey. My gosh, it is this transformation from the old model of an Ottoman Empire, which is abandoned, to the new model of a secular state, the Republic of Turkey, that makes the greatest impact of all on Asia and Africa. The American Revolution, the French Revolution, the Bolshevik Revolution did not have a comparable impact. What happened in Turkey has the greatest impact of all. And so the Republic, the secular Republic of Turkey is established. And Islam is put into cold storage. He did a number of things to antagonize Muslims. You no longer can wear this hat which allows you to make sajda. You now have to wear the Western hat. So the tarbush, I think it's called, the red one, that one is abandoned. Now you have to wear Western hats. So that with the Western hat, you could take it off if you want to make sajda. The Arabic script is abandoned. And the Latin script is replacing. The same thing happened in Malaysia. The Malay language, the Jawi language, the Arabic script is abandoned. And the Roman script, the Latin script is replaced. We have a Malaysian here who knows what happened. It did not happen with the Arabic language. It did not happen with the Urdu language. It did not happen with the Farsi language, but it happened with Turkish. The Azan, oh my gosh, for Salat must now be called in Turkish language, not in Arabic anymore. All the madrasas, all the institutions of Islamic learning are closed down. Closed down. It's war on Islam. At the heart of Constantinople. The name of the city is changed. It's no longer Constantinople. Why Mustafa Kemal? Come on, tell us why. Because they know fully well that the conquest of Constantinople in 1452 is not the one that the Prophet ﷺ prophesied. That the conquest of Constantinople prophesied by Nabi Muhammad ﷺ is still to come. Is still to come. We now can see when that conquest does come, the back of NATO will be broken. And the Western world will lose its control over the Bosphorus. That's coming. But Mustafa Kemal doesn't want us to know that. So he changes the name from Constantinople and makes it an offense, a crime, to use the name Constantinople. You have to refer to it as Istanbul, which is one of the many names it had, all names. And then comes 1924. The events are following rapidly now. In 1922, Mustafa Kemal says, yes, we're going to have a Republic of Turkey, but hey, the Western Christian, they got a Pope in Rome. So why can't we have a Pope as well? What's wrong with that? So the Khalifa is now reduced to a pope, meaning he has religious authority, he has no temporal authority. Huh? But by 1924 they had to remove that as well, because there was a challenge. The Khilafah is now being dismantled, the institution of the Khilafah. And this is the biggest prize of all that the Zionists have been pursuing since the establishment of the Zionist movement. Even when in 1917, November, General Allenby, with Arab troops fighting loyally with him, shall I repeat it? Huh? Even when in November 1917, the British general, with Arab troops fighting loyally with him, is able to conquer Jerusalem. And then in 1918, the League of Nations gives to Britain a mandate over the Holy Land. What they want is the Caliphate, the Khilafah. And in 1924 they succeed. And because of the Khilafat movement in India. But we're running out of time. And the Caliphate is abolished on the 3rd of March 1924. And then Hussein bin Ali claims the Khilafat on the 7th of March 1924. You find all of this history in my book at the back, the Caliphate, the Hijaz, and the Saudi Wahhabi nation state. These are the events of the first Arab Spring, which led to victory after victory for the Zionists. When we leave that first Arab Spring and we come now to this Arab Spring, we see the same pattern taking place. The Ottomans are removed and they put the Saudis in place to do their work for them. But now in the second Arab Spring, despite all the efforts of Saudi Arabia to save themselves, Saudi Arabia is sinking. Dajjal has used Saudi Arabia for all that he needed from Saudi Arabia. And Dajjal doesn't need Saudi Arabia anymore. So goodbye, Saudi Arabia. Dajjal has used the United States for as long as Dajjal needed the United States. Dajjal doesn't need the United States anymore so much. So goodbye, United States. In the second Arab Spring, we see now events taking place which are going to culminate with what the Zionists want most of all, a state of Israel which was born in 1948 and which since then has been growing and growing and growing in power, replaces the United States as the third and last ruling state in the world. And then Israel has to wage big wars. In order for Israel to wage a big war, she has to weaken the Muslims. Even though the governments are under the Zionist control, the people are still there. So Israel needs something that will weaken the Muslims. The best card that they have, the trump card that they have, is Shia-Sunni civil war. And that is now being played. My time is up. The second Arab Spring, I believe, is going to witness. I hope it does not happen. I hope I'm wrong. An attack on Iran, which is meant to provoke Iran. It's not an attack to destroy Iran, no. It's like a punch to wake you up and to get you to fight. And if Iran takes the bait like Saddam Hussein took the bait when he took Kuwait, then we'll see Iran attacking Bahrain. I hope it does not happen. They want Iran to take Bahrain. Oh yes, they do. Why? Because once Iran take Bahrain, the road to Mecca is straight ahead. And the Shia are going to be delighted if you offer this plum. It's the best plum in the world to offer to them. Shia control over Mecca and Medina. And that's the bait. All that the Shia Iran has to be convinced about is that the United States and Britain and France and NATO are going to dump Saudi Arabia. And that is what they're going to do now. They will dump Saudi Arabia. And the Saudis can't fight the war by themselves. No. If Iran makes the mistake of attacking Saudi Arabia, if Iran makes that mistake, then the whole Sunni world will rise up and there will be Sunni Shia civil war. And the Zionists will get what they want. And the voice of Imran Hussein will be a voice crying in the wilderness. What I've done for you today in this brief amount of time, cutting a lot of corners, is to offer you a review of 100 years of history from the perspective of Islamic eschatology, showing you Dajjal's pattern, how he's moving, and what are his strategies to achieve his objective of eventually ruling the world from Jerusalem. We pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala may cause you to become so much interested in this subject that you will research the work even more than I have done, and you'll have an understanding of events which are unfolding in the historical process, why they are unfolding, and how should we respond to them. رَبَّنَا تَقَبَّلْ مِنَّا إِنَّكَ أَنْتَ السَّمِيعُ الْعَلِيمُ وَتُبْ عَلَيْنَا يَا مَوْلَانَا إِنَّكَ أَنْتَ التَّوَّابُ الرَّحِيمُ بِرَحْمَتِكَ يَا أَرْحَمَ الرَّاحِمِينَ
We say shukran to Maulana Imran Nasr Hussain for that very enlightening and inspiring talk there. Clearly the vast information and knowledge has ignited, I'm sure, amongst the audience a lot of interest, and I'm sure there's lots of questions as well. This is now for the next quarter of an hour until tea time. We break for tea at 11. What we would like to know, the Q&A is about to start. So there's just one or two rules. I would call on everyone, please, if you want to preface, I will allow you to preface your question with the introduction, but make it brief, please, so that everybody can have an opportunity. And please confine it to one question. I would appreciate. That's the one rule. And secondly, Munib will be going around with the mic. So I would prefer, obviously, people to speak into the mic. But if not, there will be Hasnain. Can we get paper and pens to go around for people who wish to write down the question, and then you can pass it forward to me and then I'll repeat. Okay, so let's a show of hands. Okay, so it will show there's one there at the back, and then there's one here in front. I'll go with the first individual there at the back in the blue sweater. So you can first, I would appreciate if you can also state your name and then
Shukran. Assalamu alaikum everyone. My name is Abdul Karim. Shukran Maulana for the inspiring lecture that they've given us. Unfortunately, I came a bit late. I'm not sure if you touched on the protocols of the Zionist elders. You have done any research on that and just share some light on to us on understanding. Shukran.
I'll take, Maulana, is it okay if we take more than one question?
Yeah.
Sir, if you can now please, any ladies that wish to, here's the gentleman here in front. I'll take 3 questions and then we'll, and that.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
The question is, what is the relationship between Dajjal and Shaitan, together with that of Yajuj and Majuj?
The last question is the third question, then we'll come back to you.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Sheikh, I'd like to know what is the way you've been presenting your lectures. I'd like to know the way it seems that things have been very carefully planned. So may I ask who or what group is responsible for the way things have been planned in history?
So Maulana, we'll leave it at that 3, and then that's the first round. And if you could please proceed with your answers, and then we'll take a second round after that.
The protocols of the elders of Zion is an important document. The historical process has been unfolding precisely as it has been described in that document. So for us it is irrelevant. Are these genuine or not? That's irrelevant. No. It's a document, and that document has within it a lot of information that is true. So why then should we not read it and study it and benefit from it? Whether it's genuine or not, let somebody else in Washington answer that question. We're not interested. What's the relationship between Dajjal and Shaitan? Shaitan is a jinn. Allah never created any human being or any jinn as an evil being. No. The human beings have a choice to be Muslim or Kafir. The jinn have a choice to be Muslim or Kafir. And if you are a human being or a jinn, then on Judgment Day you'll have to stand before Allah for judgment. Because Allah never programmed you to commit evil. You chose that. فَأَلْهَمَهَا فُجُورَهَا وَتَقْوَاهَا. Allah inspired you with the capacity to either be virtuous or to be evil. الْحَقُّ مِنْ رَبِّكُمْ فَمَنْ شَاءَ فَلْيُؤْمِنْ وَمَنْ شَاءَ فَلْيَكْفُرْ. You have the choice, you have the freedom to choose this way or that way, but not Dajjal. Dajjal didn't have any choice. Allah created him as an evil being. Allah created him as an evil being. قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ الْفَلَقِ. مِنْ شَرِّ مَا خَلَقَ. If the evil which Allah created, min sharri ma khalaq, if that is not Dajjal, you tell me what it is. You tell me what it is that Allah created as evil. Okay? So here is an important difference between Dajjal and Shaitan and the Shayateen. Gog and Magog have to be separated from Ahlu Ya'juj wa Ma'juj, the people of Gog and Magog, the people who follow Gog and Magog. The hadith is repeated 4 times in Sahih Bukhari that on Judgment Day Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will say to Adam alayhi salam, take out the people for Jahannam, and he'll ask how many are there, O Allah? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reply and say, out of every 1,000 take how many? 999 for Jahannam. He said the one for the Prophet Muhammad said the one for Jannah will be from you, but the 999 would be Ahlu Ya'juj wa Ma'juj, the people of Gog and Magog. So Gog and Magog, those who follow Gog and Magog will be judged by Allah and sent to Jahannam. what is the status of the original Gog and Magog? The hadith does not tell us. All we know is that the original Gog and Magog are going to be killed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when Nabi Isa alayhi salam prays to him. And the method that will be used to destroy them would be something which attack them at the back of the neck, the top of the spine. A South African doctor suggested to me it will be a virus, and they will fall down paralyzed, and by next morning they'll all be dead, and there'll be quick decomposition of the body, smelling. This is a hadith in Sahih Muslim. So we don't know about the original Gog and Magog, what is their status. But the people of Gog and Magog who follow them, they will also be judged by Allah and sent into Jahannam, like human beings and like jinn. But Dajjal himself is programmed as an evil being. If Allah programs a person as an evil being, how can Allah subject that person to judgment? You answer that question. Okay. Who is responsible for what is happening in the world today? The events which are unfolding. Answer: the main actor at work on the stage of history, the main actor at work is the Judeo-Christian alliance, the Zionist alliance. And at the foundation of that alliance is Gog and Magog. See my book at the back. The main actor operating from behind the scenes is Dajjal. And he's using these foot soldiers to pursue his mission. That's the answer to your question. Yeah.
We'll proceed with the next round of questions. There was a hand. Is any ladies that could possibly? You were first, yes, if you can, and Basil, and then. Yeah.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh Hussain. My name is Muhammad bin Ahmed. I've got a question about, I understand debate they'll offer Iran, but what I don't understand in this puzzle is the way Saudi Arabia acts right now. They're very confident in Syria, they refused the UN security seat. Where do they get this confidence from?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh. My name is Tariq. I would like to know what is the significance of Syria in the world, because Syria doesn't have much mineral wealth. Is that to speed up the process in Damascus for Nabi Isa to come, or what's the status of Syria in general?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Basil. I want to ask the Sheikh, isn't it dangerous to predict the outcome of these revolutions that's happening now, that the Muslim world will somehow fall and Israel will be strengthened, not the opposite, that the Muslim world will be strong and Israel will be more weak? Thank you.
Well, can proceed.
I have a different reading of Saudi conduct. I don't look at it as confidence. When you have a cow, a bull, and you know he knows you're going to slaughter him, he now gets a strength and an energy, and you're going to fight, and you're going to have to put a lot of rope there to hold him down. This is the dying throes. This is reckless conduct now. the Saudis have been circumspect in their conduct for the last 60, 70, 80 years that they have taken control. In 1924 they took control of Mecca. They have been very circumspect in their conduct. They've been very low-key all these years. Suddenly, something happens in Egypt, and Sisi takes over from Morsi, and the Zionists are not too happy because Washington has been talking with Ikhwan, and Washington has been making promises to Ikhwan that we're going to learn about on Judgment Day, okay? And Hillary Clinton plays an important role after the election takes place to ensure that the armed forces recognize Morsi as president. And then after that a number of events take place to ensure that Morsi and the Ikhwan consolidate their power in Egypt. The 19 police officers who were killed in Sinai is not just dust in our eyes. It gave to Morsi an opportunity to take over the armed forces. He dismissed the commander-in-chief of the armed forces, the chief of staff. He dismissed the defense minister, and he broke the back of their power. And then there was the effort that he made to control the judiciary, and so on. So we see the Egyptian regime gaining in power. I don't have the time to analyze the mistake they made on the Constitution. But I don't think Washington played any part or was happy with Sisi taking over Egypt and doing to Morsi what he did. I don't think so. And Washington responded by beginning to threaten that we're going to cut off our aid to Egypt. The Saudis responded as they've never responded ever before in history. For the first time in Saudi history, the Saudis came out recklessly to say, whatever they cut off, we will give you. How do you explain that conduct? Answer, they saw the writing on the wall. In the negotiations which were taking place with Iran, and they were furious. They were able to anticipate long before the rest of us could anticipate that there was going to be an agreement with Iran. And this is going to be followed by other agreements, as part and parcel of an agenda which eventually would culminate with the dumping of Saudi Arabia in order to put a bait for Iran. So I don't consider it to be confident behavior. I consider it to be the recklessness of a bull about to be sacrificed. Number two, why Syria? Well, we know why Libya. We know why Libya. The only ones who probably don't know are those who dance to Dajjal's drum beating. Excuse my language now, because I'm furious with them. And taking help from NATO to overthrow the Libyan government. Have you no shame? Are you a people with no shame at all? Taking help from NATO? Without NATO you could not have overthrown the Libyan government. You shameless people. And now proclaiming you have an Islamic regime. I don't want that kind of Islam. You can take it and throw it in a garbage bin. Because we are not going to enter into any friendly relations. We are not going to ever seek any help or support, financial or military or whatever, from the Zionist Judeo-Christian Anglo-American alliance. No, not us. You can do it. And you're doing it in Syria now, shamelessly. Shamelessly. Why is Syria? Because, as I said earlier, the supreme goal that they're seeking to achieve at this time is civil war. in the world of Islam. Sunni Shia civil war. And Dajjal's warriors are dancing furiously to that drum beating at this time. As they have never done before, they're beating the drums of war against the Shia. Because they are people who have eyes and yet cannot see. They have ears and yet cannot hear. They have hearts and yet do not understand. They're just like cattle. I mean, you've got to excuse me for my anger now. Because I'm seeing the game plan before my eyes. An attack on Syria and regime change in Syria is going to facilitate Sunni Shia civil war. Number two, Syria has a significant and old and an important Christian community. In the same way that the secular Turks, when they took over, when there was regime change in Constantinople in 1900 and, help me somebody? Oh, you've forgotten already? 1908, the revolution succeeded. The most important revolution of all succeeded in 1908. And then came the First World War, and then Russia is inciting the Armenians to rise up against the Ottomans. And then the secular Ottoman government in Constantinople takes action against them. And then the massacre takes place. A deliberate provocation, pursuing the same policy that the Ottomans had pursued before. Now the secular Turks are doing the same thing. To so drive a dagger into the heart of Rome that there will be eternal hatred. Well, I think that Dajjal's warriors, if they take over Syria, are going to massacre the Christians. And a massacre of the Christian of Syria is going to make Rome eternally hostile to Islam. They don't want the alliance with Rome to ever take place. Number three, it will be tremendously embarrassing to Russia. Russia has only one naval base outside of Russia, and that is in Syria, on the Mediterranean coast. And to see that naval base become a NATO naval base, because Libya is now a NATO country. Everybody knows that except Dajjal's warriors. NATO is now in charge of Libya. So NATO will take that base in Syria. And that will be a mortal blow for Russia, as China will suffer a not mortal blow if Pakistan is broken up. And the naval port in Gwadar, is it called? Gwadar? Come on, Sheikh Ali Mustafa. No, it's a naval port in Balochistan that the Chinese have in order to protect Chinese shipping, oil for example. If that becomes a NATO port, goodbye to China as a superpower. Yeah.
The last question was, isn't it dangerous to predict the outcome of the
Okay. I had a choice 15, 20 years ago. I could have shut my mouth. Only Allah knows the future. And I could have put my Islamic eschatology aside, and I could have refrained from saying what no monetary economist in the world was saying, but I didn't do that. I used my study of the Quran and the Ahadith in pursuing Islamic eschatology to come to the conclusion that we are now located at a critical moment in history when we are in transition from the United States of America, Pax Americana, to another ruling state in the world. That the United States is now in decline. This is 15, 20 years ago. The record is there, you can check it out. and that in order for the United States to decline and to no longer be recognized as the ruling state of the world, the US dollar will have to collapse. I predicted this. I'm not a prophet. Don't be stupid. Don't be stupid. Businessmen predict trends in the market, that this is likely going to be happening, and so let me invest my money here. What's wrong with a political scientist looking at the events which are unfolding in the world of politics, looking at the events which are unfolding in the world of money, monetary economics, and then anticipating that the US dollar is going to collapse? What has happened since then? This is Imran Hussain who's been saying this for 15, 20 years. Did I pull it out of my hat? No. Was it an angel or jinn who was whispering to me? No. I was using a methodology that you have rejected. Your methodology, my critics, is that only Allah and His Messenger can explain and interpret Quran and Hadith, not Imran Hussain. Well, fine, that's your methodology. I did not accept that methodology. I said Allah sent the Quran لِقَوْمِ يَتَفَكَّرُونَ. He sent the Quran to a people who will think things out. And so there is in the Quran and the Hadith that which has to be studied and thought out. And because I was doing that, using that methodology, I was able to anticipate 15 or 20 years ago the US dollar is going to collapse and a new monetary system is going to come to replace it. And now we are on the doorstep of what I was anticipating 50, 20 years ago. I don't see why I should stop doing what I'm doing.
Sorry, just to finally, 1 minute, the question as an extension on the strength of Israel, the fact that the revolution, the outcomes of the revolution, won't Israel be strengthened?
When we say that Israel wants to become the ruling state, we're not saying that Israel will become the ruling state. No, we say Israel, the plan is that Israel wants to take over from the United States. Why? We say that Israel wants to become the ruling state so that a man will stand up in Jerusalem and declare, I am the Messiah. Isn't it not beneficial for people to understand their plan? And we see their plan working out. They're succeeding. Why? Because we dum-dums, while fighting with each other in sectarian warfare, have abandoned the Quran and abandoned the Sunnah. Yeah. Where is the evidence? The evidence is right here. Where is it? Here. Tell me, is there any one of your scholars of Islam who have said what Imran Hussain has said, that this is bogus, it's fraudulent, it's haram? I've said it. Because I've studied the subject using my methodology. Because of things like these, Israel is succeeding, and the Zionists are succeeding in achieving their goals. What I'm doing is trying to wake up our people, trying to teach, doing it with patience, but sometimes I get angry.
Shukran jazilan. I've got one question here from Spain. Okay, so the brother wants to know if Muslim parties in non-Islamic states like Tunisia, for example, isn't this like the figure of Yusuf alayhi salam in the government of the king?
I don't know what is an Islamic state. I never heard the term in my whole life. I don't know whether it dropped from Mars or Venus or Jupiter. In my study of Islam, I never came across the term Islamic State. No. What I know about in Islam is the Khilafah state. And I know the difference between the Khilafah state and the modern republican state that probably Iqbal himself did not understand. Muhammad Iqbal, Dr. Muhammad Iqbal. Huh? So when you take the Islamic movement and you register it as a political party, and you're fighting elections in this modern secular republican state, huh? And you want me to respond to that conduct of yours, I say you're just whistling in the wind. What you should be doing is to keep in your heart the Khilafah state and struggle to restore the Khilafah state, and to recognize the difference, the big difference between what Allah and His Messenger had given to us, which we have abandoned and which we must struggle to restore, and that which has been given to us by the Judeo-Christian Zionist Alliance, the modern state. This is what they did in Egypt with Ikhwan. This is what they did in Pakistan with Jamaat Islami. This is what they did in Malaysia with Parti Islam. This is what they're doing in Indonesia. And this is what they did in Turkey, but they're not fooling us. This is not our agenda. No. Our agenda is to struggle to restore the Khilafah state.
Shukran jazeelan for that session. That concludes the session. So we pray inshallah that the session was beneficial to everybody, and that the ilm and the knowledge that we've acquired here, that it will be benefit to you and to those who have passed it on. So that concludes the session. Obviously the next on the agenda is tea time. I think everybody would love that at this moment. I think we're going to ask everybody to be back here at 20 to 12. If at 20 to 12, you can please come back, and then that will be followed by Sheikh Ali Mustafa on the Quran and history, and so we're all looking forward to that. So inshallah, 20 to 12, please be back, and promptly, and tea will be served outside, so if you can just all file out, it will be served outside, and I think the weather is nice enough for tafadul.
Mic test, mic test.
Okay.
Audio, mic
Very
test.
He came
1,
and
2.
said-
No, I think it's okay.
So it's okay.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. I would like to welcome you all back to the second session of today's proceedings. We hope sincerely that you have enjoyed your tea and you are rejuvenated and energized to proceed with the program. I'd like to take this opportunity to once again on behalf of the Cape Town delegation and all of us present here today to extend our thanks to Maulana Imran Nasr Hussain for once again providing us with a magnanimous as well as a unquestionably relevant contribution to our ilm and contribution to understanding the current context in which we live. Let me just take this opportunity to furthermore give an overview of the rest of today's proceedings. We will now commence with Sheikh Ali Mustafa, who will interrogate the topic, the Quran and history. This will be shortly followed at about 12:20 with a short question and answer session, whereby then we will break for dhuhr and proceed with lunch. With regards to lunch, I would just like to say that lunch will be served at about 1:20. There will be good wholesome biryani on sale, as well as beverages of which I'm sure you'd like. Thereafter lunch, we will then proceed with a very important public dialogue at about 2:30. This will extend till about 4:10, which includes Maulana Imran Nasr Hussain, dealing with the issue of banking and the Holy Land with well-known political activist Terry Crawford Brown, who is famed with two very, very famous literary works, one being Iron Money, and his most recent literary contribution being Iron Diamond. These contributions deal with such things as the international arms deal, as well as the South African context in this regard, as well as Iron Diamond, which deals with the international diamond trade, as well as the Zionistic roots and corruption thereof. I'd also like to take this opportunity to also remind each and every one of you of the broader public program that exists beyond this seminar. On Tuesday at Park Road Masjid at about 7 p.m., Maulana Imran Nasr Hussain will be dealing with an intro to religious thought at Park Road Masjid. On Thursday as well, at the Brooklyn Masjid, Maulana Imran Nasr Hussain will be dealing with the topic of confronting sectarianism, the Sunni, Shia, the Sufi, and the Salafi. This will also be in the backdrop of Surah Al-Kahf. As a branch of the two-day seminar that we are currently experiencing, yesterday, today, on Sunday, tomorrow, we'll be dealing with the extremely important topic of who is Gog and Magog, and an Islamic response to Dajjal's sexual revolution. We urge each and every one of you to please join us and gain full benefit from these contributions. Without further ado, I would like to prepare each and every one of you for our next guest, the very well-known and well-loved scholar, Maulana Ali Mustafa. He hails from Suriname, South America. He was a student of Dr. Maulana Fazl Rahman Ansari, Rahimahullah, at the Alimiya Institute in Karachi, the very same institute from which Maulana Imran Nasr Hussain has taken his formal training. He is a much loved and much respected, as we saw yesterday, contemporary and peer of Maulana Imran Nasr Hussain. He's also Hafiz of Quran, and he serves as a spiritual advisor of the Islamic Network here in Cape Town. He has worked in many different stations around the world, from Holland to Trinidad, as well as in Pakistan. He avidly pursues, in his own personal capacity, da'wah in our context and abroad. Without further ado, Sheikh Ali Mustafa, dealing with the topic, the Quran and history. Bismillah.
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah nahmaduhu wa nasta'inuhu wa nastaghfiruh. ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهدي الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلله فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن سيدنا ومولانا محمدا عبده ورسوله صلوات الله وسلامه عليه وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وسلم تسليما كثيرا أما بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ولم يسيروا في الأرض فينظروا كيف كان عاقبة الذين كانوا من قبلهم كانوا هم أشد منهم قوة وآثارا في الأرض فأخذهم الله بذنوبهم وما كان لهم من الله من واق صدق الله العظيم. Have they not traveled in the earth and then observed what was the ending of those who were before them? Verily, they were superior to them in strength, military might, and in the traces which they left behind in the earth. But Allah seized them with punishment due to their sinful lives, and they had none to protect them from Allah. Sadaqallahu Azim. Respected ulama, learned brothers, my dear and beloved brother and colleague Maulana Imran Hussain, beloved ladies, sisters, and gentlemen, brothers in faith, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. The subject actually is the study of history in the Holy Quran. And actually, I don't know if it's here only for you, but focus on the exegesis of the Holy Quran by Hadrat Maulana Abdul Alim Siddiqui rahmatullahi alayh and Hadrat Maulana Professor Dr. Muhammad Fadlur Rahman Ansari rahmatullahi alayh. May Allah bless them and give them light in their graves, inshallah. Ameen. The object is to look into history, not just Maulana's give you a resume of the last 100 years, but we look at history itself. How does this Quran approach it? Because in it, I'm not going to go from long time and coming through the history, but I'll give some examples and also give verses from the Quran in order to show how does the Quran deal with this subject. Now, I'll come back to this verse later, but I'll start with another one. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given the gift of knowledge to the humans and placed them above the angels by that distinction. Therefore, let us, in the study of the human history, start with the quotation from the Holy Book, from the word of Allah. And I'm taking this particular verse in Surah Al-Kahf. And I'll show you why. It is verse 64. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. قَالَ ذَلِكَ مَا كُنَّا نَبْغِي فَارْتَدَّا عَلَىٰ آثَارِهِمَا قَصَصًا. Those of you who read Surah Al-Kahf, you remember this verse. When Musa alayhi salam went out with his servant to meet a particular mysterious teacher, and they had to meet at some particular place, which is called Majma al-Bahrain. And they went on till they passed. And when they passed is when Musa alayhi salam started feeling fatigue. And he asked the servant, where is the fish we had brought? He says, we passed a place where it slipped away. So he says, oh, that is what we were looking for. قَالَ ذَلِكَ مَا كُنَّا نَبْغِي. That is what we were looking for. I say, فَارْتَدَّا عَلَىٰ آثَارِهِمَا قَصَصًا. Then they went back tracing their steps. This is the idea about history. But the word qasas, for instance, in the Holy Quran, there is Surah Qasas, means stories. Stories of old. You see, that means to trace back your steps, to go back to the history, go back to where you came from. So, then when they went back, Allah Ta'ala is informing us, فَوَجَدَا أَبْدًا مِّنْ عِبَادِنَا فَوَجَدَا أَبْدًا مِّنْ عِبَادِنَا آتَيْنَاهُ رَحْمَةً مِّنْ عِنْدِنَا وَعَلَّمْنَاهُ مِنْ لَدُنَّا عِلْمًا. So they too, they found one of our servants or of our slaves, unto whom we had bestowed mercy from ourselves, and whom we had taught knowledge from us. Now, Allah describes the person who Musa alayhi salam met by two qualities. He says, we had given him rahmah and ilm min ladunna. That is what is called in Islamic religious language, ilm ladunni. Ilm ladunni means knowledge from me. That means a special type of knowledge which is directly from God, from Allah. You cannot read it in any book, you cannot study it from anyone. It is directly from Allah. That's why it's called ilm ladunni. And that is the special knowledge which this person, whose name is not mentioned in the Holy Quran, we know him as Khizr alayhi salam. They say alayhi salam because this general consensus among ulama that this was a prophet also, the green prophet. Khizr means green. It is also a symbolic expression or name given to him, or title, meaning that he's evergreen. Wherever he comes, it becomes green, means life-giving. In any case, there's something special about Khizr alayhi salam that Musa alayhi salam want to meet him. So, now, bear with me, because we're going to go back to the beginning of the section, this ruku. It begins and opens with the verse 60, when Musa alayhi salam says, and Allah Ta'ala tells us, and that's the section begins with Musa alayhi salam, by scholar Musa. Remember when Musa alayhi salam said, it means remember that thing. By scholar Musa, remember when Musa said, he says, he's spoken to his servant. وَإِذْ قَالَ مُوسَى لِفَتَاهُ لَا أَبْرَحُ حَتَّى أَبْلُغَ مَجْمَعَ الْبَحْرَيْنِ أَوْ أَمْضِيَ حُقُبًا. He said to his servant that I will not give up traveling until I reach the junction of the two seas, or I spent years and years traveling. Majma' al-Bahrain. You must remember this, we're going to talk about that. Oh, Amdiya Hukuba means if I don't reach that place, I'm going to keep on traveling till I reach that. No, the junction of the two seas is what Musa was seeking, alayhi salam. Now, I look a bit in some of the tafsirs. Here is tafsir Tanwir al-Mikbas van Ibn Abbas. Because Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu is known among the Sahaba as Mufassir al-Quran. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam has prayed for him, especially blessed him with good memory and understanding and fiqh. Man aradallahu bihi khayran yufaqihu fi din. And this was a special thing about Ibn Abbas. The Sahaba, they had in general also, but because he was small, he was the smallest at that time, so much that Hazrat Umar would take him among the bigger ones because he had understanding of the verses, which was unique. This tafsir is taken from several of his sayings on the verses of the Quran. In Tafsir al-Mikbas, we read, Allah then mentioned the story of Musa alayhi salam with Khizr. It so happened that it came to Moses' mind that there is no servant on the face of the earth who is more knowledgeable than him. You might have heard the story sometimes. People ask him, who's the most learned? He says, me. And he must be correct also because he was the prophet. He had the prophetic knowledge, and nobody can be more knowledgeable than the prophet. But there is something else. Allah said to Moses, I have a servant on earth. Now this is Tafsir Mikbas is saying. I have a servant on earth who is more obedient and more knowledgeable than you. And this servant is Khizr. Moses says, O Lord, guide me to him. He said, take with you a salted fish and walk along the sea shores until you find a rock in which there is a fountain, the fountain of life. Sprinkle some of the water on the fish until it comes back to life. There you will meet Khizr. Allah said, and and when Moses said to his servant, this servant's name was Sajarda Joshua bin Nun, Israelite nobleman, and he was a servant in the sense that he kept his companion and served him. I will not give up until I reach the point where the two rivers meet, where the sea water meets with the river water. That means where the Persian Gulf and the Mediterranean Sea meet. Though I march on for ages, or I will continue going on for years. Okay. Majma' al-Bahrain. I think you get it. No. You must stop it. Yes, that's it. Majma' al-Bahrain. I put it there so you can read it with me. Majma' al-Bahrain literally means the joining of the two oceans. Literally, it means the joining of the two oceans. The meaning of the Quran verses have external, zahir, as well as batin or internal meaning. Now, this is an expression which has been used by some erroneously, like the batini. They have got some other meaning with that, where they give their own batin meaning, internal meanings. But here, when I mention this, I refer to this in the sense that you got the external meaning, meaning the literal translation or literal meaning of the words. But there's something else about revelation, the language of revelation, which is symbolism. The prophets, Nabi, the Anbiya, they are people who give the knowledge from the unseen. And they speak a language which is a language of reality. So sometimes in the revelation you got expressions which have got a meaning in the normal understanding, but they have got the deeper meaning. It got a symbolic meaning. For instance, Yadullah, the hand of Allah, Fawqa Aydihim, Allah's hand is above their hands. Now, some people are literalists and they say, no, it is actual a hand with 5 fingers, exactly so hands. It can't be because Allah Ta'ala says, it cannot be literal like that. So, now this is one very cryptic example, but there are other expressions also. Some of the verses are very clear where it doesn't need explanation. Kul huwallahu ahad. Allah is one. It's not difficult to understand. But you got other things also. The allegorical verses, which are the verses with hidden meaning or symbolic meaning, those are the ones in which we can research and understand better and further. And this is one of them. As to the Zahir meaning, Tafsir Tanwirul Mikbas refers to the meeting of the river's water in the sea waters, like the Persian Gulf and the Mediterranean Sea. Now in South Africa, I think you can advance it. Leave it there. Leave it right there. In South Africa, Cape Town, you know that we have got the meeting of 2 oceans, the Indian Ocean and the Atlantic Ocean. But from the history of the Quran, which bind Musa alayhi salam to the Middle East, Surah Maida, you read in several places where Allah Ta'ala said that وَإِذْ قَالَ مُوسَى لِقَوْمِهِ اذْكُرُوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ عَلَيْكُمْ إِذْ جَعَلَ فِيكُمْ أَنْبِيَاءَ وَجَعَلَكُمْ مُلُوكًا وَآتَاكُمْ مَا لَمْ يُؤْتِ أَحَدًا مِنَ الْعَالَمِينَ. That is one verse. But we know also from the various verses of the Quran that Musa alayhi salam met Fir'aun. Now Fir'aun is not mentioned in this verse, but Fir'aun was a ruler of Egypt. So Musa went to him and the Israelites were enslaved in Egypt. So definitely that the story took place there, not in South Africa. Although we have got also a Majma al-Bahrain here also. There are 2 seas meeting here as well. Okay. Now, when you take the Arabic meaning, there would have to be 2 factual oceans, which is not there. This makes us think, is the meaning perhaps allegorical? And that brings us to the batin, or hidden meaning of the verse. Musa alayhi salam was himself an ocean of knowledge, being the repository of revelation. But if he was to meet someone who would teach him something, then that one would have to be another ocean of knowledge. You see? Because he's an ocean of knowledge, so another ocean of knowledge. And as to the story that tells us that someone turned out to be a greater or another ocean of knowledge, just like the Persian Gulf and the greater Mediterranean Sea, which is mentioned in the Tafsir there. It's one ocean, is another ocean. Okay. Divine wisdom ordained the subtle construction of the Quranic verses in order to direct attention to the proper methodology for study of the Holy Quran. That means never study any verses or hadith in isolation, but rather to study the whole of which it is a part. All the relevant verses or hadith, and then we can distract meaning. Means if any subject, you will notice that in the Holy Quran, the Quran mentioned different events at different places. Not the whole story here and never again. No, you find the story of Adam alayhi salam, for instance, and Iblis mentioned in several places. The answer of Iblis to the question of Allah also in different places and in different wordings. And all that has meaning. And it's necessary to put them all together to understand the whole of the story. And that's like we gave the example yesterday of Iblis. Some people think that he, or some people still think perhaps that he's an angel. But when you put all the verses, you will discover that verse where Allah says explicitly he was a jinn. You see? So in this way, you come to discover the meaning. Besides consistency, the conformability of the Holy Quran in its various parts brings us to the logic of theoretic consciousness, which too is inherent in the Holy Book, even as the logic of religious consciousness is enshrined therein. Now I'm quoting from Maulana's Quranic Foundations. And I hope that you will get a copy and read that book. Because Maulana has spent years in producing this book in order to extract meaning from the Quran and to show the methodology of how to structure an Islamic or a Muslim society. That's why the book is called like that. Foundations and Structure of Muslim Society. Quranic Foundations. So this is a part of it. Okay. So the conformability, however, signifies in the estimation of the best Quranic authorities not only uniformity of teaching, but also the principle that all the verses of the Holy Book are interrelated as parts of an intelligible system whereby the existence of a system of meaning in the Holy Quran is positively established, as also the technique of the exposition of that meaning. Meaning that the Quran has got a system of meaning you cannot get out of it, means you cannot interpret something else than the system dictates. And also in the Quran itself, Allah has given the technique as to how to extract the meaning. So it means you got to study the Quran. And that's why you find verses in the Holy Quran where Allah is calling on the Barun al-Quran. Don't they deeply ponder on the Quran? We have to do that in order to understand it. That's why Allah is saying that at various places. Note also, when I quote Maulana Ansari, rahmatullah alayh, it also means, it is also in the line of Maulana Abdul Alim Siddiqui, rahmatullah alayh. He's been here also, you have seen both of them, those who are old, but in the young ones must have heard also, this is the school which we come from. Maulana Ansari was a student of Maulana Abdul Alim Siddiqui, rahmatullah alayhim. And that is the methodology which they follow. A grasp of the system of meaning of the entire Quran is not possible without a prolonged and dedicated struggle in the path of knowledge and without internal intuitive spiritual insight. You have to have that. And that is what the nur or basirat means. The intuitive spiritual insight. This is something which you cannot read or learn from any book. It's a gift which Allah gives to the mu'minin. And that in turn is not possible unless one sees with the nur, the light of Allah, binurillah, Most High, subhanahu wa ta'ala. Thus Allah Most High keeps with Himself the keys of such understanding, which He delivers to those of His learned servants, whom He chooses to bless with the nur and with the capacity to correctly interpret certain verses of the Quran. And when such explanation is given, regardless of whether or not it is given for the first time, it is naturally recognized as truth by those who have eyes to see. That means to say it's permissible and rather commendable by the Quran itself to do research in order to understand the Quran better and in order to understand life better through the light which Allah gives through the Quran. Now, the study of history is that which takes place, it takes us back, tracing our steps to the past, whereby we may arrive at the junction of the two oceans of knowledge. Okay, Moses retraced the steps. Number one, our accumulated knowledge till the present moment, on the one hand, and two, the great wisdom underlying the events, which we can never understand except by the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, on the other hand. Okay, that is also the two oceans of knowledge, you could say. That great wisdom, you can give the next slide. That is already there. Yeah, it's in Surah Al-Jumu'ah, Surah Al-Jumu'ah, where Allah Ta'ala says, Kulin al-Maut. You see the things with this verse, this is when we return back to Allah. Okay, then Allah will inform of all things. Kulin al-Maut alladhi tafirruna minhu فإنه ملاقيكم ثم تردون إلى عالم الغيب والشهادة فينبئكم بما كنتم تعملون. Yani Allah Ta'ala says that verily you are fleeing away from death. The death which you are afraid of, it's going to meet you. One day you will have to die. And then you will be returned to Allah, who is the Alim al-Ghayb wa Shahada. He's the one who has got knowledge of all that is manifest and all that is hidden. And then you will be informed of all that you used to do. All the things which are happening in this world, we try to understand. We understand some, maybe most of it we don't understand, but then we will come to know. But to come to know now, that is the great thing. Because we are living now and we have to deal with the events. So to understand it now, will make us better prepared to deal with them. Now, so the Holy Quran, Allah mentions various events of the past which we have to derive lessons of wisdom. Okay. That way, the Holy Quran does, the way the Quran does is different from the historians. This has to be because the Quran is not a history book. It's a book of guidance. قول الحكمة لا يخلو عن قول الحكيم لا يخلو عن الحكمة. The wise, the saying of the wise is not empty, is not free from wisdom. So, every word and every statement and every narration in the book of Allah is miraculously placed in its exact position with absolute accuracy without any mistakes or flaw of Allah. Allah says subhanahu wa ta'ala, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Inna alladhina kafaru bizikri lamma ja'ahum wa innahu lakitabun aziz. Verily those who disbelieved in the reminder when it came to them. And Allah says, verily it's an honorable, respected book. Means because it's Allah's speech and He has protected it from corruption. لا يأتي الباطل من بين يديه ولا من خلفه. The next one. لا يأتيه الباطل من بين يديه ولا من خلفه تنزيل من حكيم حميد. Okay. Falsehood cannot approach it from before or not after it. Means, it's an expression, means not at all. From any direction. There cannot be any falsehood in it. Next one. The book of guidance, the Quran has referred to us several instances in the past, which human civilization, in order to show us and to demonstrate to us, number one, the basic message of the prophets. It was consistently the same. Differences were only in relation to their social economic structure. When you read Surah Qasas, for instance, if you read Surah Qasas, for instance, you will see different prophets mentioned. So Surah Anbiya also, different prophets mentioned. Not Surah Qasas, I was talking about Surah Shu'ara. Surah Shu'ara, Surah number 26, you will see different prophets mentioned, and each one, starting with Nuh alayhi salam, he says to the people the same thing. Do worship your Lord, don't take another beside him, and I don't ask you for any payment. All of them said the same, and then after that comes the thing which is in context of their living. Two, whenever the people insisted on a miracle, whenever the prophets came, people always say, oh, you're from God, from the Almighty, then prove to us, how do we know that you really, then they want a miracle. And when a miracle was given to them, and they refused, then they were, of course, what happened to them? They were punished, and they could not escape the punishment. Number 3, whenever they rejected the signs, the promised punishment was meted out and they have never been able to escape it. Number 4, when the people accepted the guidance, the people of Yunus alayhi salam, as an example, and it's mentioned in Surah Yunus also, that there was one nation who accepted the guidance and they prospered. See, that is an example. Allah has given this example, so that means that people accept the message, they will prosper. This also proves that Allah is the one who is in control of everything, of the weather, of the climate, of everything. Materialists, people who don't believe in a God who involves himself in the world, they try to explain things away as if it happened by itself. Then you might have seen some documentaries, for instance, concerning olden times. Like I see one on Sodom and Gomorrah. You know, the peoples who were destroyed, the people of Lut alayhi salam were destroyed because they were involved in the same thing which is happening here now again, the homosexual relations. They were destroyed by fire and brimstone, as it said. But they showed in the documentary that there was a tsunami, you know, a natural, you know, it just happened. It means, in other words, it was not a punishment, just a natural event. That is the idea, you see. I'm seeing that the time is going much faster than I wanted it to go. So I think I will not be able to give you all of it. Actually, I even give you half of what I had prepared for you. So I'm going to skip a lot of it. But let me go through this. But I want to give you number 5 is mentioned here, that there were people in the times gone by who were more numerous and more powerful, even smarter than the people who came after the Quranic revelation, means us. All of them were proud and arrogant of their knowledge, but they were incapable to prevail against Allah. With all the knowledge and all the power and technology they had there at their disposal. This is a powerful message for the kuffar all over the world today, who think that with their science and technology they can take on Allah. You know, they think they can. Anyway, I won't be able to give you all these verses, but there are several verses in the Quran. Like in Surah Ghafir, you have several verses of them, whereby Allah is mentioning about people who were before you. And in all of them, Allah says, فَلَمَّا جَاءَهُمْ رُسُولٌ بِالْبَيِّنَاتِ فَرِحُوا بِمَا عِندَهُمْ مِنَ الْعِلْمِ. The next one. This one. فَرِحُوا بِمَا عِندَهُمْ مِنَ الْعِلْمِ. Now, farah means to be happy. Farah means happy. Means they were confident. Means they were confident of their science and technology. And the verse which I read at the very beginning, كَانُوا أَشَدَّ مِنْهُمْ قُوَّةً. Now the Quran is a book for all times to come. So it's not speaking only about those Meccans. It's speaking of for all times to come. Because meaning it is not true only then, it is true also today. So when we believe that it's true also today, it's true, that means to say that even more powerful than the people of now. And when I've given later, which I can give you now, but examples, there are archaeological scientists who have gone around the world and they have findings whereby they have discovered, for instance, the laser. The laser gun is something which you cannot produce except with this advanced technology which we have got now. They have found evidence of space travel, drawings of rockets and things like that, different types of things. Then I have not yet mentioned about Asian civilizations and findings of them. They are more advanced than we are. And they were still destroyed. Now, and the difference between the Quranic approach and the approach of the historical scientists and the subject of history is that the historical scientists, the historian, they study the history and bring it to the people, and they are trying to prove and to show that this world was there all the time, and they come with fantastic numbers. How many millions of years it was there, but in religious history, but it's not like that. Okay, but another thing is also to show, and they are saying that they're trying to prove that man was planted here on this earth by some other superior civilization from outer space. So this colony of earth has been made. You see, the question about creation of Adam and Eve doesn't come at all. Whereas the Quran mentions, and if you see the stories of different prophets, of different people, Allah will mention about them, about the achievements, and Allah mentions particularly about each one of them that the prophets were sent to them with a message to worship only one God and not to take any partners besides Him. And the people became arrogant and proud, and they were destroyed. They were destroyed. And that is an example. Nakal, the Quran says is an example, a lesson for those who come before and those who came after. About in the case of Fir'aun, it mentions. So that we may derive a lesson that no matter how much advanced we are, there were people before. And Allah mentioned several verses who were more advanced. But when they became proud and arrogant and thought that they could take on Allah, then they were blasted and they could not do anything about it. This last one I mentioned, or maybe if I got some more time. فَلَمَّا رَأَوْا بَعْسَنَا. Okay, the next one. The next one. Well, leave it there. Leave past it. فَلَمَّا رَأَوْا بَعْسَنَا قَالُوا آمَنَّا بِاللَّهِ وَحْدَهُ. When they saw our might or power, they say, we believe in Allah, the one. We give up. Hands up. بِمَا كُنَّا بِهِ مُشْرِكِينَ. We leave all this shirk. فَلَمْ يَكُ يَنْفَعُهُمْ إِيمَانُهُمْ لَمَّا رَأَوْا بَأْسَنَا. But their iman did not benefit them when they saw the might of God, when the punishment came. سُنَّةَ اللَّهِ الَّتِي قَدْ خَلَتْ مِنْ فِي عِبَادِهِ وَخَسِرَ هُنَالِكَ الْكَافِرُونَ. And this is the sunnah of Allah, that He has been the way of Allah in dealing with His servants, and the disbelievers lost completely, or they will lose thereby. So therefore, we look into history with the Quran, so that we may learn lesson. The Quran calls it ibrah. Ibrah means to learn a lesson. We don't study the history just to see how wonderful they were. No, they were wonderful. We are also wonderful. We think we're most wonderful and we are more advanced, but that does not benefit us because we are for a short time here. So as they were advanced or more advanced, when they denied the message, they were punished. And that the same can happen again. Now at the moment the world now is in the grip of the Kuffar civilization, the Dajjal civilization you may say, the Ya'juj, Ma'juj, who are making mischief in the earth, so that they think, and it has been always been, that they can take on the believers and rather take on God, take on Allah. The great war which has been mentioned, Malhamatul Uzma, that the Christians and Jews, they know it by the name of Armageddon, is going to take place, and it has to take place, it has to happen. Why it has to happen? And that is going, as we're talking about history, something called the end of history. History also comes to an end. But Allah is the one who will bring it to an end. And I believe it comes to an end when Isa alayhi salam comes. It's not just the end of time, but the end of history. There's a difference between the two. Okay, so then is when there will be the final showdown. It will be really between religion or non-religion. The war is going to be really about that. And without the intervention, divine intervention, the believers can win. And it's always been like this. Allah has to intervene, as He has always done, and He will again. So let us prepare ourselves now so that when the time comes, even before the time comes, we are on the side of believers. So we must make no compromise. That's what Maulana was saying. No compromise with kufr. No compromise with the Ya'juj Ma'juj civilization. No compromise with Zionists. Zionists actually are brought there to punish the Jews, but also to test the believers. It's a big test. Dajjal is the leader of that. So if we make compromise, فَإِنَّهُ مِنْهُمْ, then we become from them. We don't want, if we are from them, then we are not from this side. So may Allah guide us that we may be among the believers and remain among the believers. No need to worry about anything. We are preparing for the higher and better way to live. That is the state of Jannah, inshallah. This is the world stage. May Allah accept our efforts and may He make us believers in His army. Assalamu alaikum.
Shukran. Shukran, Sheikh Ali Mustafa, for that extremely insightful retrospective look with regards to the Quran and history and how it has a fortuitous effect on our lives forward. I would like to now open the floor for any questions and answers regarding the topic that was just discussed. What we could do is we could also have a show of hands from both the brothers and the sisters, and then we will have one of the colleagues, Yusuf, to just run around and take the questions, inshallah. So both from the brothers and the sisters, please offer your questions now. The same format will be followed, that if there wishes to be paper sent forward, then we could also do that as well. The first question is as follows. How come we make the difference between knowledge that we get from, or that we get internationally, if I'm not mistaken, from, I'm not sure how to get intention. Internally. Okay. How we get internally from Allah, and knowledge that one gets from Shaitan. How do we differentiate between the two?
What do you mean by knowledge from Shaitan? Maybe
possibly, or how do we know from which influence comes from Shaitan?
I think that maybe this question means, paraphrase it, that how do we distinguish between just knowledge and intuitive knowledge, like the one we call Ilm Ladunni? Is that maybe what is meant? I think perhaps that's what the questioner means. Because it doesn't mean necessarily that any knowledge which is not intuitive or divine or spiritual, then it is from Shaitan, you see. I mean, they say some people have said also you go to the schools and you learn from the Dajjal system, so you are learning Shaitan knowledge. But, I mean, knowledge is knowledge. There are, in knowledge, in Islamic fiqh also they talk about ilm al-nafi', beneficial knowledge, okay? And among the scholars they say that the knowledge of the Sharia, the knowledge of the way of life of Islam, that is beneficial. You should know about Allah, you should know about the Prophet, the Risalat, you should know about the Ibadah. I mean, what you should do as a believer, that is necessary knowledge. Okay, now this is, you can all study this in books. But there is also other knowledge which can be considered, which is considered by some of the scholars as haram knowledge, like knowledge of sihr, to study magic, is haram. You see, we don't study magic. That is, you can call that shaitan knowledge. You see, not all is shaitan knowledge. That can be correctly called properly shaitan knowledge. But all other knowledge is knowledge. But then, all what you can read in books, and that's what I was saying this, and I think maybe that's what the questioner means. You can study in books, but there is the intuitive knowledge, which is not in books. Now, as I was mentioning here, the intuitive knowledge is of different levels, whereby, for instance, if you are studying, like you read the Quran, I mean, I talk about my own personal experience, and anybody who studies the Quran can have this experience. I don't know, some of you must have seen one brother wrote on an email about a burst of intuition which he got on reading the first and second verses of Surah Al-Hajj, you know, and he understood, which he explained, and it seems to make sense. Now, that is intuitive knowledge. You see, sometimes you read a verse, or you study a subject, any subject, and you don't understand it. Now, intuitive knowledge works like that, that a normal, sound mind works over time. When you go to sleep, and you have been, like a student, you have been working on a subject, like a philosophical or difficult to understand subject, when you go to sleep, your brain also goes to sleep, not all of it. Okay, your conscious mind goes to sleep, but your subconscious mind never sleeps. Okay, because that runs your body. And your mind of understanding, now in that also you got the heart. The heart is also understanding. The heart is an organ which also understands. It's not just your brain, but your heart also. There is something which is called ilqa, means a thought is thrown into your mind. You know, that is from Allah. You can get that, but you get also ilqa from the devil. And in order to be saved from that, you need to read the Quran regularly, so that you may be saved from that. And not only spiritually, your understanding will also be guiding you. I mean, Allah will guide you with that. But there's the other knowledge, the ilm al-ladunni, that is something which you cannot study at all. It is not in any book. This is something which comes from Allah. And I cannot explain to you how that looks like. It is something subjective. It is not something which you have to publish. I mean, you may come to know things, for instance, about the spiritual truths. You need not to publish it. You read, for instance, the Holy Quran, because the Prophet was a prophet. But the Prophet ﷺ himself, beside the knowledge of revelation which was brought by Jibreel alayhi, then he got also revelation which was not brought by Jibreel alayhi, which were directly from Allah. An example, Hadith Qudsi. But without going to Hadith Qudsi, inside the Quran itself it is. Surah Najm, when the Prophet went from Miraj, Allah Ta'ala says, فَأَوْحَى إِلَىٰ أَبِدِهِ مَا أَوْحَى. Means that was directly. Because we know from the Miraj experience of the Prophet, when he went up with the Buraq, there came a place of the Sidratul Muntaha, when Jibreel alayhi salam says, no, I can't go further, you have to go yourself further. He couldn't go further. The Prophet had to go further where Jibreel could not proceed. So when he went further where Jibreel could not proceed, then Allah Ta'ala says at that stage, فَأَوْحَى إِلَىٰ عَبْدِي, then I revealed to my servant whatever I revealed. I mean, he didn't say what it was. Ma awha, whatever. Means that is between him and Allah. Okay? So, of that, he might reveal some of it to us, and he don't have to reveal another one to us. There are secrets, and they are not for all. So that is now when we come to the ground of the territory of Ilm al-Ladunni, and I think that's what they wanted to know. The Ilm al-Ladunni know that's something very special. You remember again when Musa alayhi salam met Khizr, And Musa alayhi salam knew, because Allah told him to go and meet that precious servant who has got knowledge which he don't have. So he asked him, قال هل أتبعك على أن تعلمني مما علمت رشدا. He says, may I please follow you, so that you may teach me that which you have been taught rightly. Khidr alayhi salam said to him, you will not be able to have patience with me. إنك لن تستطيع معي صبرا. And he told him also why. He says, وكيف تصبر ولا ما لم تحط به خبرا. How are you going to have patience on that which you have got no knowledge of? He's telling Musa directly that he has no knowledge of that. He knows that Musa alayhi salam doesn't have that knowledge. No, that's ilm laduni. Okay? I think it's enough for this. I hope.
Shukran, Sheikh. We just have a questioner from the live stream.
Sheikh, we have a question from Spain. The individual is asking if historical documents and books and records are manipulated and have been corrupted, then which sources of knowledge do we study history from?
If all the documents...
If most documents, records and sources or books on history have been manipulated, or through the time of history have been manipulated and corrupted, from which sources do we study history from?
Okay, again, as I was saying, the ulama have spoken about useful knowledge and not useful knowledge, as well as haram knowledge. I just spoke about it. You don't have to do that necessarily. It's good. Like engineering is also very good. We don't have to study, but it's good. So if you can study it, it's good. But again, our scholars of old, I mean Muslim scholars, in the past we had them. We had many scientists among them in different various fields. And they took the inspiration from the Holy Quran. Now, just like non-Muslim scientists, they follow the scientific method to get knowledge. Now, in the field of history, for instance, what do you have to do? You have to do research. Do your own research. If the books are not reliable, do your own research. And there are I mean, Muslim scholars, and there are reliable scholars. But if you don't trust them, and there are a lot of problems in that. And I am recently reading a book on tasawwuf, for instance, and misinterpretation of tasawwuf, whereby I was shocked to see a lot of things. Many books have been tampered with. A lot of wrong texts have been inserted into reputable works, and the general people don't know. One of the safest way, or maybe the safest way, of staying clear of all the misguidance and confusion is to read the Quran. Now, mostly we read the Quran just for barakah, but we don't read the Quran only for barakah, for spiritual blessing. We should read the Quran in order to understand life. The Quran has got two sets of verses, ayatul muhkamat wa ayatul mutashabihat. Okay, these are the straightforward verses of the Quran which give us the basis of the book, which are the basis of the book. Allah Ta'ala says, Hunna ummul kitab. Those are the basis of the book, and they are the foundation of the Islamic way of life. But the allegorical verses, those are verses now which are subject to interpretation. Okay? So those are the ones which give you pointers to different things, and even in history. So many things are mentioned there, and then you can go and search further.
Shukran, Sheikh. There is another question from the brother over here, and then another question from the brother behind.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
It's okay, I hear you.
Okay.
That's on.
I do spend a lot of time, not now, but I used to spend a lot of time watching documentaries and things like that. And I see on the slide there, it says something about ancient Atlantis. All right. One of the documentaries, they try to prove the existence of mermaids and things like that. All right. Because I looked at the slide, I was prompted to ask, what does Islam say about these type of things? What does it say? To just disregard it, don't take notice of it? Because I have a friend who's studying in Medina, and I asked him about this. He said, look, some of the scholars have mentioned that it's not permissible to eat mermaids, or it's not permissible to do this and that. This type of knowledge, is it something that should benefit us, or is it something that we should just disregard?
Knowledge about Asian civilization, Atlantis is just one. I had mentioned 10 of them here. I don't have time to go through them. But historians have, including Muslim historians also, if you read Ibn Khaldun also, he reads about these things, have unearthed, has discovered several findings. That's what archaeologists do, which point to people and their activities, different civilizations. And there are sites, there are many pointers to what has been before. Mohenjo-Daro, Harappa is in this valley civilization. All of them are there. The Egyptian civilization, the Incas, the Mayas, they are all there. South America, Africa, Far East, Australia, India. There are many findings in all these different sites and things which you cannot deny, like I was mentioning about the laser gun, for instance. So Islam, look, Islam is a deen, a way of life, where the guidance from Allah teaches us how to live correctly, steering away from what Allah has prohibited, and then so that we may not harm ourselves physically or spiritually. Okay. As far as other things are concerned, which has not been prohibited, for instance, the pursuit of knowledge. The Prophet has encouraged us to pursue knowledge. Okay. We have to do it. It is the thing to do. The Quran tells us from the first man, Adam alayhi salam, Allah gave him knowledge of all things. No, in the symbolic understanding of the verses of the Quran, that tells me that as a human being, as a child of Adam, let alone be a believer or a Muslim, no, just as a human being, it tells me that I have got a right, the prerogative, the birthright, to seek knowledge and to get knowledge. Okay. Al-hikmatu dallatul mu'min in wajada akhaza. That's one of the sayings which says that the hikmah, the wisdom, the knowledge is the lost property of the mu'min. The believer has more obligation to seek the knowledge, because as a believer, he's not seeking knowledge just for fun or to prove some theory, but he's seeking knowledge in order to understand. Allah Ta'ala himself says in various verses in the Quran, Siru fil ard, or Afalam yasiru fil ard, travel the earth, or don't they travel the earth, fayanzuru, so that they may see. So you must go out and investigate. And when you investigate, you will find these things what these people are saying. That's what it is. So it is good. We should be doing it. We are leaving it for others to do. We should be in the forefront doing this. Yes.
Please, brother, go ahead.
Shukran, Sheikh. Abdul Karim here again. I just want to try and understand properly the difference between wisdom and knowledge. My question might sound a bit complicated, but I hope you will be able to rectify me. If a person have acquired wisdom, does it automatically mean, or does it mean that you have also automatically acquired true knowledge? And if a person have only acquired true knowledge, does it automatically mean that you have acquired wisdom? And I believe that wisdom is superior to knowledge. Can you just elaborate on that question and maybe answer me on that, and make me more understand between the difference between wisdom and knowledge?
Yeah, that's correct. It is correct. Because Allah Ta'ala says in the Quran, man who has been given wisdom is hikmat in Arabic, he has been given a great portion of good. Wisdom is something very special. It's something which you cannot study from a book. Okay, it is. You can, for want of a better word, I could call it spiritual insight. Spiritual insight, you could call it. Okay, knowledge, information, anybody can read from books. For instance, if you talk about wisdom and different types of things, there's wisdom. For instance, you study religion. Now, we have the information, what to do. But now there comes a situation which is not in the book. What to do? Now, if you have wisdom, you'll be able to solve it. Otherwise, you're stuck with the text. You're stuck with the text. What to do? You got a situation, for instance, they say there is hadith that about the izar. You see, you're not supposed to make your izar. That is the I don't know what you call it here, the lungi or the sarong. You know what you wear. The Indonesians have got that dress. The Arabs also used to wear it, but not supposed to go below your ankles. Okay, we wear pantalon, we wear the pants. So the pants should also not go beyond the ankles. All right. But now, sometimes the pants is so long that it goes beyond the foot. So if you have to perform your salat, you got to fold it up. Now, I was in Pakistan. I've been, besides study, several times there. And there we find a lot of people, you will find them here also among the scholars who are just one track. They are not able to think beyond, I should say, out of the box. They are not able to think out of the box. They have to think inside the box. If it's outside the box, it's beyond them. And they don't like to go outside the box. So what happens now? They say that you're not allowed to fold it. You're not allowed to fold it. You're not allowed to fold it, and it is too long. So how are you going to pray? Both sides you're in a problem. You're supposed to cut it, but you don't have a scissor. Now, wisdom now will save you in this one. You see, as wisdom can save you in this one. As an example, you could say, as a wise person, a wise decision could be based on the hadith in the A'mal bin Niyat. Your intention is to please Allah. Now you didn't know this, but now the situation is this. So you just fold it, though it is not supposed to be folded, but that is the intention. The intention is not, even the thing about the izar, if it is long, Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, the most beloved companion of the Prophet, his izar was always going below. And he said, Ya Rasulullah, I've got this problem. Maybe I'm proud because it's shown as a sign of pride. He says, no, not you. Because you're not doing out of pride. Because he was very slender. He was not a fat man, you see. So he couldn't keep his arm in place. It would keep on falling down, you know. So that, he says, no problem. Okay. So wisdom is to place the thing in its place. That's some of the scholars say that wisdom means the understanding and the knowledge of where to put a thing in its right place. For instance, a word, to say the right word at the right time. How do you know? It is spiritual insight, or intuitive knowledge, which cannot be learned from a book. And that's why Allah Ta'ala says, وَمَنْ يُؤْتَ الْحِكْمَةَ فَقَدْ أُوتِيَ خَيْرًا كَثِيرًا. It is being given to you. Whoever it is given to him, then he got a great portion of good. That's what it is. Yeah, yes, wisdom is superior to knowledge. Because knowledge is only inside the box. Wisdom is the ability to think outside the box. I think so.
Sheikh, tell me, is it on? Sheikh, we know that the earlier question about corruption of books. Now, a Christian audience watching this video, for example, may be under a misconception that it would include, for example, the Holy Quran, which we know that was not the intention of the question. Yeah. It was not referring to revealed books. But what I would like to point out that if you could just give us a short exposition for the benefit of our non-Muslim audience, that the great care in regard to the way, the circumstances in which the Quran was revealed over 23 years, how it was recorded on parchment, pieces of shin bone, committed to memory and properly preserved, where there was absolutely no question of tempering, compared to the previous books, revealed books that we have to believe in as Muslims, the original Injil, the Torah, the Zabur. More in particular, we can now focus on our Christian brothers throughout the entire Christian world, where if you could just explain to them that Nabi Isa alayhi salam, which they call Jesus, or Yeshua, did not write the New Testament. It was written, say, 50 years after his death, after he was resurrected. We don't believe he died on the cross. Yeah. According to Quranic revelation, Allah says it was made to appear as such, and tradition is Judas Iscariot was crucified. And then we know about Mark, Luke, John. When the current New Testament was written 50 years AD to 70 years, I think, or 90 years after Nabi Isa alayhi salam, that there was scope for misinterpreting what Nabi Isa said in regard that they are now saying that he said he's the Son of God, Father, Son, and Holy Ghost, which Nabi Isa alayhi salam never ever said that I am the Son of God, because he says, our Father who art in heaven. He didn't say my Father. And you know the other verse in the Bible, I have many things to say to you, but you cannot bear them now. I would like you just to put that in its proper perspective.
Just like to say that, to preface the actual answer, we've only approximately got about 3 to 4 minutes left, but if Ali could just try to do justice to the question, and perhaps we could complete the question at a later stage as well.
No, the question was already there. The brother was actually commenting. He said, so if you want me to do the commenting, then I can do some.
About the Quran.
No, the question about the books with the brother that put before does not refer to the Quran. It refers to all other books besides the Quran. And what the brother was saying just now here, that for the benefit of the Christian people who are watching it, it doesn't refer to the Quran. But that means to say all other books, including the Bible, and in the Bible we have got different books which have been mentioned in the Quran. The Quran mentioned about the Zabur, which is called the Psalms in the Bible. The Quran mentioned about the Torah, which is the Torah in the Bible, and the Injil, which is known as the Gospels given to Jesus. And then, of course, in the Bible there are many other books. Now, from our perspective as Muslims, the Quran is the absolutely only authentic book in the world. There is no time here to go into detail of proving it. There have been many discussions and debates on that, but that is the point which has to be understood. We accept, to us Muslims, the Quran is the only book. So the Quran is the criterion. That's why it's also called the Furqan. So on the basis of the Quran, we can judge every other thing, every other book, and all other statements or truths which are presented on the Quran. In short, I would say this.
Jazakallah. Is that okay, sir? Okay. Perhaps we've got time for literally just one more question from the ladies, if they are.
Okay.
The questioner reiterates, can a non-Muslim also have wisdom?
Yes. Non-Muslim, one who denies God. That's what you mean to say. Huh? Well, I can't say. Because wisdom is something, if he sees wisdom as a spiritual insight or intuition, then yes, it can be. Because it's not linked with faith per se. A person can be wise. A person can be wise, but not necessarily guided. I'm open to correction, but when I look at the Prophet's life, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there was one man who was known as father of wisdom. And when the Prophet came, he changed his name. He says, no, wrong name, father of ignorance. Who is that? Abu Jahal. So a person can be world wise. A person can be world wise. And that's what Abu Jahal was. So if he's not believing in God, then he is not really wise, according to our understanding. And of course, you may have your opinion, but that's the way I understand it.
Shukran.
If we do carry on after Zohar, I would like to share, give a proper exposition to satisfy our Christian brothers in the world, you know?
Yep.
The question of the Trinity and when the Quran was revealed.
No, but that's a different subject altogether.
Inshallah, if there is time later on, we have another Q&A session. If there is time right at the end, we can expound a bit more about that. We would now like to formally break for preparation for Dhuhr, and then we'll proceed with lunch, and therefore we will reconvene within the auditorium at 4:30 for the public dialogue, inshallah. Sorry, 2:30. Sorry.